I don't know what it feels like to lose the thing you built your whole life around and get it back after you'd stop letting yourself believe you would. I don't know what he was doing in that tunnel either. I'd imagine he checked his neck out of habit, the one a surgeon rebuilt 14 months ago. But that's a guess. Nobody filmed it. What we do know is what happened next. August 2nd, 2026, US Bank Stadium, Minneapolis. 90,000 people fill the building, and the match hasn't even begun. The original plan is simple. Sami Zayn versus Finn Balor, the winner earning a shot at the undisputed WWE Championship. Nick Aldis, freshly reinstated as SmackDown's general manager,
You're reinstated as a general manager of SmackDown,
walks out and adds Gunther. The match becomes a triple threat. Then Aldis looks around the building and says there's one more name, Kevin Owens. And Minneapolis loses its mind. Then Owens launches himself from the top rope, a senton crashing down onto 3 men scattered across the floor. Back in the ring, another swanton crashes onto Gunther. Then he climbs again. This time, he's coming for Sami Zayn, and Sami is waiting for him. 14 months after surgery, the neck a surgeon rebuilt takes Sami's raised knees at full speed. The impact jolts his entire body. He gets up anyway. April 4th, 2025, SmackDown. Nothing about the setup announces itself. The ring lit exactly the way it's lit every other Friday. The rig with no idea tonight's different. Nobody bothered to dim anything for this. He's not in character. There's no line WWE would ever write that sounds like what he actually says.
The last few years I've learned not to take anything for granted, and I will never take this for granted.
His neck's been hurting since a match back in January, he says. It needs surgery. He doesn't know when or even if he's coming back.
I mean, this is all I could ever picture myself doing with my life, so.
One sentence carries the whole thing.
I want to say thank you, and I'm sorry, guys.
For a few seconds after he says it, a building that spends every other night cheering on cue doesn't make a sound. Hold this against the other image. The knee, the neck, the getting up anyway. 16 months and one costume apart. He has been Kevin Steen. He has been Kevin Owens. He has been the prize fighter, a man who once said friendship weighed less than a paycheck. He has been Universal Champion, and he has lost a championship faster than anyone in that building thought possible. He has been the guy the crowd chanted for. He has been the guy they wanted to see get his teeth kicked in. Sometimes both, in the same building, 8 months apart. He has hosted his own talk show inside a wrestling ring under his own name because he wanted one and nobody stopped him. He has been somebody's best friend. He has been that same person's worst enemy, sometimes in the same calendar year. He has been told to change more times than anyone bothered counting by men with real power over his paycheck, and he's done it exactly 0 times. Every one of those is true. None of them is the whole answer. And put together, they still don't answer the question. Here's that question, the only one that's actually worth asking. When the lights go down, and the character goes back on the rack, and there's nobody left in the building to perform for, who is Kevin Owens? To know the answer, I have to take you back, further than either night, to the first time somebody handed him a version of himself to try on. An airport gate outside Chicago, 2005. Early morning, or the version of morning that comes after a night with no sleep in it. 2 wrestlers wait for a connecting flight to Los Angeles. They drove overnight from Montreal to Albany, flew to Chicago. Now this, molded plastic chairs, gas station coffee, 30 hours awake between them. The particular kind of tired where a man's eyes stop landing on any one thing. Then Kevin spots him a few gates down. Steve Austin, trying to read. He doesn't think twice. He taps Rami's shoulder. Come with me. Rami doesn't ask who. He just stands up. Okay, who are we fighting? They're not fighting anyone. Kevin Steen is 21, and he asks Austin the only thing worth asking. Austin doesn't offer technique, or conditioning, or a story about his own career. He said only one sentence.
So right before, as you were about to leave, I'm like, hey, do you have just one piece of advice for us, anything at all? And then that's it. You said just run your mouth. Never stop running your mouth.
Handshake, boarding call, gone. 3 years earlier, a wrestling school outside Montreal, Jacques Rougeau's, had wanted Steen sanded down to fit a shape that already existed. He left instead. Now, a bigger name than Rougeau's is telling him the exact opposite. Keep the mouth. Within a few years, Rami puts on a mask. El Generico. The first draft. Rami will spend the next 20 years doing this over and over, trying on a name, wearing it until it stops fitting, and reaching for the next one. Generico becomes Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn becomes the conspiracy theorist, honorary Us, or whoever WWE needed that year. He keeps putting on the mask. Steen never gets that option. Whatever's underneath him has to make every trip through every curtain for the next 20 years. Villain, champion, prizefighter, friend, enemy, in the same body, under the same face, with nothing sewn on to take off after. 17 years later, in a stadium in Arlington, Texas, Kevin Owens stands across a ring from that same man and hits him with a stunner, a move Austin gave him his blessing to use. Somewhere in the cargo hold of the flight they're about to board, Rami's mask is folded into a duffel bag between 2 pairs of shoes. Steen doesn't own one, and he never will. By 2008, Steen and Sebe, El Generico, are one of the most talked about acts on the American independent scene, headlining Ring of Honor while holding the tag titles. Then, around 2010, the company changes hands. New management. Owens would say later, plainly, that the people running it by then had decided they wanted him out. The issue was never whether he could work. It was how he looked doing it.
We thought Kevin would never get signed. You know, no one would bet on Kevin. If you take one look at him, you'd look at somebody who Vince would have no interest in.
I never thought Kevin Owens would be signed by WWE. He's not a gym guy, he's not a body guy, he's not Hulk Hogan. Like, he looks how Kevin Owens looks.
Heavyset, tattooed, nothing about him built like the traditional idea of a champion. The actual ask, in blunter terms than the storyline ever put on screen, 6 months off, a gym, come back different. He heard it as a demand dressed up as advice, and he left for 6 months. Then he comes back, unchanged, at exactly the size he left, and wins the Ring of Honor World Championship within the year, at the time, the single most prestigious title on the North American independent scene.
My name's Kevin Steen. Let's fuck Ring of Honor.
15 years later, a different authority hands him a version of the same sentence, and this time, there's nothing to argue with. A surgeon explains what a 4th and 5th vertebra look like on a scan that doesn't lie. The ask isn't about how he looks. It's about whether he can feel his own arms in 5 years. One of those demands was discrimination dressed up as a body standard. The other one was a matter of survival. The only thing they share is a single sentence, unchanged in 15 years. Your body has to change before you're allowed back. Back in 2010, the friendship breaks on screen, in public, over a full year. The best feud either man will ever be part of, because neither of them was fully acting anymore.
And I came up with an idea of me and Generico breaking up and doing a partner versus partner angle, but you know, we had twists and turns that aren't necessarily seen in usual partner versus partner angles, and we had it mapped out where it would last a whole year, which is, you know, unheard of nowadays.
The match they're building toward comes down to a trade. One man keeps the thing that lets him disappear, the other keeps his place in the company. December 18th, 2010, the Hammerstein Ballroom, New York. Final battle. No disqualifications. Generico's mask on the outcome. So is Steen's job. Steen goes for the finish and doesn't get there. Generico's hand goes up. Steen's doesn't. He leaves through the curtain, still in his gear. It's the last time Ring of Honor's cameras see him for the better part of a year. The gym request from earlier that year hadn't worked. Steen hadn't changed. The mask versus career match is the company finding another way to make the choice for him. If he won't become the wrestler they want, they can just take the wrestler away. 15 years on, April 4th, and he walks out on SmackDown and says the thing WWE never scripts. 20 years before that promo, a stranger in an airport told him never to stop running his mouth. Nobody said anything about what happens when the thing that needs saying is that the one thing he built his whole life around might already be gone. Promo. Because Owens and his doctors spin that stretch trying to let the spinal cord heal on its own first, rather than commit to anything more invasive than necessary. In the week before it finally happens, every symptom shows up at once. By his own account,
in the last week, for some reason, the symptoms all came in one shot. It's all been happening.
A man who'd spent 20 years getting back up was now waiting to find out if his body still remembered how. Single-level fusion, the fourth and fifth vertebra. Dr. Adam Cantor calls it the least severe outcome available. Owens would say later he chose Cantor for one plain reason. If Randy Orton trusted the man with his own spine, that was enough. Even Cantor wouldn't call it settled. Decompressing the cord didn't erase the risk, and the damage underneath it was severe enough that some lasting effect stayed a real possibility, no matter what the surgery accomplished. He'd hoped, going in, to heal fast enough for one specific match, a shot at John Cena, somewhere in the final lap of Cena's retirement run. That window closes within months. 9 months after the surgery, the scans still don't look the way they're supposed to. His bones aren't fusing at the rate they should be. He'll describe it in exactly 2 words. It was scary. Wrestlers usually reach for frustrating when they mean something worse and don't want to say it on camera. He reached for scary instead. Somewhere in that stretch, he takes a coaching job on a reality show at the WWE Performance Center, in front of a room of kids nobody's decided are stars yet, and tells them, on camera, that he's losing his mind, not knowing if any of this is coming back. Same shape as 2010, a body that fails a test administered by people with power over whether he gets to keep working. 15 years apart, and the silence afterward runs about the same length either way. The better part of a year, gone from the only life he's built. Back in 2012, when he comes back with the same body, he beats Davey Richards for the ROH World Championship in May 2012, in his home country, in front of a crowd that spent 2 years watching the company try to make him disappear. The body was never really the problem. Refusing to change it on somebody else's schedule was. He never said Steen couldn't work. He said the body wasn't a champion's body. Cornette, on a podcast years later, still sounding aggrieved, except his version comes with the actual record still attached to it, and the record doesn't agree with him. Then, in early July 2026, a scan finally comes back showing what everyone had been waiting a year to see. On July 18th, 1 year to the day since the surgery, he steps back inside a wrestling ring for the first time since Elimination Chamber. It's just a test. This time, there's no title on the line and no crowd watching. Just a man finding out if the last 15 years were all for nothing. Both returns happened quietly, on his own terms, at a cost only he was keeping track of. Everything that happens next is louder. Ask anyone who spent real time around Kevin Owens, and eventually you'll hear some version of the same warning. Get close enough, and it costs you. On camera, at a time of his choosing. By the fall of 2017, 3 names already proved that rule. 2 years after winning the one championship his old company spent 2 years trying to keep from him, WWE signs him. The first thing that changes is his name. Full Sail University, December 2014, NXT TakeOver Our Evolution. Sami Zayn has the NXT Championship over his shoulder. 10 years of independent wrestling finally paying off. Then, the music changes. Owens comes out smiling. Zayn meets him halfway up the ramp, arms already open for the hug the whole building's expecting. Owens picks him up instead, drives him down through the stage boards, championship and all, in front of a crowd that's still cheering when the sound underneath them changes.
That means more money. That means a better life.
Friendship doesn't pay the bills, he says on television afterward, straight-faced. He declares himself the prize fighter, a man who'll take a paycheck over 10 years of history with his best friend. The second name starts as a real friendship built for television. August 2016, Owens volunteers to team with Chris Jericho, who calls him his best friend on air and means it enough that it sticks. Jerry KO becomes the hottest act on Raw, built on real inside jokes, the list of Jericho, a running clipboard of grudges the two of them share. Jericho's interference wins Owens the Universal Championship that fall. Then, Jericho makes a mistake. He accepts a title defense against Goldberg on Owens' behalf, without asking. Terrified and furious, Owens has every right to be angry, so Jericho throws him an apology dressed as a celebration. Gifts, a painting, the whole show. Owens seems to forgive him, and hands Jericho a gift of his own, a customized version of the list. Jericho reads his own name on it a half second before Owens powerbombs him into the ring apron and puts him through a television monitor. A third name carries real history too, Cody Rhodes, a friendship that predates the storyline by years. Owens vouching for him with the Young Bucks in 2016 when Cody bet on himself outside WWE. Allies again by 2023, fighting the Bloodline together, until Cody teams with Roman Reigns, the same Reigns who'd spent years tormenting Owens. Owens calls that the betrayal. Fan footage catches them fighting in a parking lot after the cameras stop rolling. On the mic the next night, he draws his own line. He didn't turn on Cody. Cody turned on him. 3 names. The clinical term for the pattern is relational transgression for instrumental gain. Trust built specifically so it can be spent later, on a schedule only one person controls. He'll break trust again, years later, with someone else entirely. A turn on Randy Orton, a former tag partner, a pile driver that sends him out on a stretcher. Same category of moment, same silence afterward. All of that is the pattern. Here's the one piece of it that doesn't fit the pattern at all. September 12th, 2017, SmackDown Live. Building toward a Hell in a Cell match with Shane McMahon, Owens negotiates a specific condition on air. If Vince McMahon provokes him, he gets to hit him for real. McMahon agrees, shakes his hand. Owens headbutts him, splits the 72-year-old chairman's forehead open on camera, blood and all, then a super kick. Then a frog splash off the top rope, while McMahon lies there. He'd explain years later that Vince spent the whole handshake trying to goad him into it.
He just talked all kinds of shit. Like, he's shaking my hand and just saying, I don't remember what he said, but it's definitely he was really trying to provoke me.
Never knowing the outcome had already been decided. He'd made up his mind the moment he had permission, long before McMahon's hand ever touched his. That decision didn't start in the handshake. It started 2 years earlier. And unlike every other name on this list, this one was never about a paycheck, or a spotlight, or a storyline. This one was personal. This is the part of the story where, on paper, everything should have been settled. He'd already done the hard part, clawed back from an exile that was supposed to be permanent, won a title the old regime spent 2 years trying to keep from him. If the story ended here, it would read like a clean one. It doesn't end here. 2016, Universal Champion. Except WWE never lets him hold it like one. Jericho's interference had won it for him in the first place. Triple H's backing kept it. Analysts call him the weakest world champion in years. Fastlane, March 5th, 2017. Owens is mid-entrance when the arena's lights cut to the ramp behind him. Jericho, back for the first time since the TV monitor. And for one distracted second, Owens turns to look. That's the whole match. Goldberg spears him, jackhammers him, pins him. 22 seconds. Owens is still getting up when the referees already handed Goldberg the belt. A month later, it should have gotten better. WrestleMania 33. Owens beats Jericho for the United States Championship. A real win on the biggest show of the year, days after the worst loss of his career. Backstage at the gorilla position, he finds Vince McMahon and asks the only question that matters to him in that moment. We good? McMahon says no, calls it on camera, one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history.
Vince said it was the worst match in WrestleMania history. And I was like, what? Kevin was very sad. And Vince told him he needed to lose weight and this is terrible and you don't know anything, because he wanted Kevin to be this type of heel. And Kevin was doing a lot of stuff off the top rope and flashing moves, and Vince did not want that. Do I think it was a great match? No. Do I think it was the worst match in WrestleMania history? Absolutely not.
It's a single syllable, caught on tape by a camera that wasn't supposed to be rolling for anyone but the crew. Footage that wouldn't air for 8 more months. By every account since, that word did more damage than 22 seconds against Goldberg ever managed. Goldberg's offense was just offense. A spear and a jackhammer, the kind of loss any wrestler survives on the way to the next one. McMahon's word was a verdict, delivered by the one person whose opinion carried real authority over whether Kevin Owens got to keep being Kevin Owens at all. The clip explains the moment. It doesn't explain the 2 years after it. How much of that word he carried into every match that followed, unrecorded, doing its damage in real time, while every camera in the building pointed at something else. That's what was sitting behind the headbutt. The same question he'd asked a stranger in an airport at 21, asked one more time to the wrong man, and answered with a single syllable that never got taken back. Every other name on that earlier list could be explained by a job description or a paycheck. This one never could. 8 years later, he carries a different wound, the exact same way. If you've stuck around this long, you're who this channel's actually for. Like the video, subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and now, back to it.
One specific afternoon in 2013, me and my wife went to the dog park with our dog, and I'm throwing the ball around and watching my dog run around. And I remember thinking, it was a beautiful day. And I remember thinking, man, I get to do this on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. I don't have to be, I worked in a warehouse. I've worked in jobs that I didn't like, that I just had to do, And I remember feeling so grateful and thankful. And I think I even sent out a tweet right then and there, thanking like everyone that supports independent wrestling for allowing me to literally be at the dog park with my dog at 1 p.m., And I had accepted that it probably wasn't going to happen, and I was really okay with it.
Owens talks about 2012, the year he left a day job to chase wrestling full-time. His friendship is worth less than money. Everything else, the championships, the record book, 20 years of being called great, was always the byproduct. The kid's future was the point.
And I'm not at home as much as I wish I could be because of my career, but obviously that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make, as well as my wife and my kids.
It's there in the name itself. When Owens signs with WWE and needs a ring name, he picks one for a reason the audience isn't meant to catch at the time, a tribute to Owen Hart, and to his own son, who he'd already named after the same man.
When Owen passed away, I remember thinking, if I ever have a son, I'm going to call him Owen. So it's actually more of a tribute to my son, but my son's a tribute to Owen,
It's the same instinct that had him picking up the phone for the Young Bucks in 2016, vouching for a friend with nothing in it for him.
You, of course, told me, talk to Matt and Nick, see, if there's anything there.
Cody Rhodes leaving for the Indies that year hit him harder than the storyline would ever let on.
There's some guys that would take it right in the heart. You, Randy, Jimmy, Sammy, Finn, Becky, all in the heart.
That really sucked, Owens said years later. I have people in this business that are more like brothers to me than friends. Cody was one of them. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, the longest running dynamic in modern WWE, endlessly rebuilt, endlessly broken. Allies, enemies, tag champions, bitter rivals over a decade. On screen, it's a story engine WWE can switch on or off depending what the card needs that month. Off screen, Owens has put it plainly, more than once. I would have never gotten into WWE without Sami. November 2017, WWE's UK tour. Owens is supposed to attack Kofi Kingston, take a scripted beating from the New Day, and set up Survivor Series. He does the first part. Then he and Sami simply walk away together. WWE sends them home. Reports call it going into business for themselves. But Owens wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting Sami. After all of his betrayal, he refused the one that would have cost him nothing, and even took the punishment for it. It's the same instinct that shows up everywhere else in this friendship. Whatever the story needs from him, there's a line past which Owens won't spend Sami Zayn to get it. He'll spend almost anyone else, not him. 2020 through 2023 puts that instinct to its hardest test. Zayn talks, dresses, and carries himself his way into Roman Reigns' bloodline, playing the loyal outsider so completely, the Usos start calling him family. He changes his walk. He changes who he laughs with. On camera, on purpose. It's the same trick Rami once folded into a duffel bag, a different face for a different room, except Zayn wears his for 3 years instead of one match. Owens watches all of it from outside the group and refuses to do the one thing that would have made his own life easier, pretend he believes it too. He tells Zayn over and over, on camera and off, that the family isn't real, that he's being used. It costs him the friendship for a stretch. Zayn keeps choosing the version of himself that fits inside the group. Owens keeps standing outside it, saying the one thing nobody in that room wants to hear. Zayn stays inside another 3 years, until the bloodline turns on him too, exactly the way Owens said it would, at WrestleMania 39. Then, in 2023, at SoFi Stadium, the story turns all the way around. Owens and Zayn walk in as opponents in the latest chapter of 9 years of on and off betrayal. and walk out as tag team champions together. The first time either man has held gold as the other's partner instead of his rival. Nobody had scripted that as the inevitable ending. For a long stretch, it looked like the friendship had already used up every version of itself the story had left to give it. Off-screen, underneath all of that, there's a photograph. Not the two of them holding a title, a hotel room. No context in the frame at all. Just Zayn crouched down at Owens' feet, doing something you'd need the caption underneath it to actually understand. Pulling a sock onto toes that won't move on their own. Owens was sure that night that he'd broken his back. Sure in the specific, unreasonable way you get sure of things at 2 in the morning in a hotel room somewhere in Texas. Years before either of them was famous enough for a moment like this to matter to anyone else. He hadn't broken it. Didn't matter. Someone still had to get his socks on, because there was a bus in 6 hours. And the bus wasn't going to wait around for two guys to finish being scared. June 2026. Zayn wins his first world championship at Night of Champions in Riyadh. Owens, well over a year into a neck injury by then, isn't there in person to see it, but he's one of the first people to publicly congratulate him when it happens. Becky Lynch right there doing the same. He posts a tribute of his own too, a string of old photos, and one caption explaining the last one, the hotel room, the socks. It's the only time either man has ever put words to that night in public. What actually held this together was never the on-screen loyalty or the on-screen betrayal. It was a man willing to say the hard, unwelcome, true thing to his best friend's face for 3 years running. And the same man, years earlier, willing to kneel down and do something neither of them has ever fully explained to anyone but each other. It's worth saying plainly, none of this makes WWE's version of the friendship fake. The tag titles were real. The bloodline beatdown was real. A company can build a decade of storylines around something true and still only ever show you the part of it that was useful to the card that week. Both things were happening at once, the whole time. The company was just never in the business of pointing a camera at all of it during the same segment. Molded chairs, bad coffee. Same kind of place as that layover outside Chicago. 9 years on. A different airport, a different stranger, a different kind of advice. That first one taught him how to be a performer. This one teaches him how to survive being a person. 2014. 3 weeks to find his kids a school in a city he'd just moved to. Owens runs into dusty roads at an airport and talks for an hour about nothing but life, family, and fear.
He sits down next to me. So what do you think? And I turn and it's Dusty. In that airport, just about life.
By 2025, this is the list, waiting on the other side of the worst year of his career. His wife, his kids, his parents. Big E, whose own neck had already ended his career, and who knew exactly what Owens was staring down, because he'd stared down the same thing and lost. Finn Balor, sending messages Owens would go back and reread on the nights it got bad. And Randy Orton, putting him in touch with the surgeon who'd handled his own spine. A house full of people waiting for him to come home. That's what the prize fighter was actually fighting for the whole time. Minneapolis. Same building, same crowd. Still not sure this was ever going to happen. Pick up where we started. He'd already taken Zayn's knees to that surgically repaired neck and kept moving. Now watch what he does with it. Gunther locks Zayn in a sleeper. Balor breaks it with a coup de grace, covers Zayn for a 2 count. Owens fights back in, lands stunners on Gunther and Balor both. Zayn reverses one into a blue thunderbomb for a near fall of his own. Then goes for a haluva kick. Owens ducks it, answers with a super kick, and finishes it with a stunner. The same move Steve Austin gave him permission to use 21 years after an airport gate. 3 count. The building, already loud since he walked out, finds another gear anyway. He wins. #1 contender to the undisputed WWE Championship. 17 months after a promo where he told the world he didn't know if he'd ever do this again. Backstage, later, the post-show interview is supposed to belong entirely to him. Big E is the one holding the microphone, the same friend from the recovery, the one whose own neck ended his career, instead of letting him have this exact moment. He asked the questions anyway.
6 months was when they were supposed to do it. They're like, it's still not right. So then they're like, we're not doing a scan for another long while. So by that point, I'm like, man, it might not, maybe it just won't happen.
Owens tells him there was a stretch where he didn't know if this was coming back at all, and he wasn't ready for the idea that it might not. Then he brings up what everyone had been telling him. The WWE medical staff, his family, his own surgeon. Please be careful. He'd told them all, okay, I'm never being careful, he says. Right there, still in his gear. 21 years since a stranger in an airport told him never to stop running his mouth. Crowds, bosses, and now, evidently, surgeons. He's run it in front of every one of them the exact same way. Trace that back far enough, and it isn't really about the surgery. It goes back to 2012, walking away from a steady job because there was a kid at home and a version of himself that couldn't afford to keep chasing ego instead of a paycheck. 14 years later, it's the same refusal, sitting across from a surgeon instead of a boss. And with the rest of that same microphone, on the one night that was finally, unambiguously his, he spends part of it on somebody else. Tanea Brooks, an AEW performer known to wrestling fans as Rebel, is fighting ALS. Some things, he says, are bigger than wrestling. He asks the people watching to help however they can.
Because you know what? This all could end tomorrow. As I've been clearly proven this week for me, I don't take anything for granted.
He has been Kevin Steen. He has been Kevin Owens. A name that started as a gift to somebody else, his son, and the wrestler the boy was named for, years before it ever became a brand. He has been prize fighter, and champion, and heel, and face, and the man who split his own boss's forehead open on his own negotiated terms. By the time any of this mattered enough to write down, he'd already collected the Ring of Honor World Championship, the Universal Championship, the United States Championship, and a tag team title standing next to the same friend he'd once driven through a stage. All of that sat there the whole time. True, and mostly beside the point. For this video, and for him. Take every one of those away, one at a time, and here's what's left standing when the lights go down. Just the part of him that was always going to keep showing up, with or without a camera pointed at it, whether that meant a stadium or a hotel room floor. Showing up was never the performance. It was the only thing underneath all the roles that was actually his. Jacques Rougeau, Jim Cornette, a son who needed food on the table, a boss who wouldn't say yes, a friend who never left, a stranger named Dusty who talked to him for an hour about nothing at all, and whose exact words nobody gets to have but him. This video started at a stadium in Minneapolis, or one can argue that the real story itself started at an airport in 2005, but neither one was actually the beginning. 10 years before that gate, an 11-year-old kid in Quebec sits on the couch with his father, watching a rented VHS tape of WrestleMania 11, watching a guy who wasn't even the biggest man on the card do something that looked less like fighting and more like flying, and losing anyway. He's just a kid on a couch, free of every role the world will ever hand him, and before the tape's even over, he decides that whatever that was, he wanted it. Before there was a Kevin Steen to become, let alone a Kevin Owens. He was just Kevin, somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's friend at an airport, a kid on a couch, watching a stranger fly and lose anyway, deciding that was worth wanting before he had any idea what it would cost.
For some reason, one day my dad decided to rent the wrestling tape, and I watched it from beginning to end with him. It was WrestleMania 11. Shawn Michaels wrestled Diesel on that show, and at the time I was a pretty scrawny kid. For my age, I was 11 years old. So to see a guy who was a lot smaller than all the other wrestlers end up being the best wrestler on the show really spoke to me, and I think that's the moment where I decided maybe I could be a wrestler.